The trunk opened with a dull, heavy click. And in that single moment, everything changed. Prince William stood in the pale morning light of the Clarence House courtyard, looking down at something no one in that circle had expected to find. His face went still. Not angry, not confused. Still. The kind of stillness that only comes when a person sees something that reaches all the way back into the deepest part of their life and pulls. What was inside that metal box had not been meant for his eyes. Maybe not for anyone's eyes. And the person standing a few feet away, the person whose car it had come from, said nothing. Just stared at the ground. That silence would echo for days. But to understand why that moment hit William the way it did, you need to go back. Not to that morning. Not even to that year. You need to go back to a woman who spent the last years of her life writing things down in private, because she had no one left she truly trusted to speak to. Princess Diana kept diaries. She wrote letters. Long ones. Honest ones. The kind of writing that comes out at 2 in the morning when the rest of the world is asleep and a person finally stops performing and just tells the truth. Those documents were supposed to be locked away, sealed, protected inside the kind of archival security that the royal family reserves for its most sensitive records. They were never supposed to be in the trunk of a car parked on palace grounds. Camilla Parker Bowles had spent decades rebuilding herself in the public eye. It was a long and difficult road. For years, she carried the weight of a label the press had given her and the public had accepted without question. The other woman, the one who stood in the shadow of a marriage the whole world was watching fall apart. When she finally stepped into the role of Queen Consort after marrying King Charles in 2005, it felt like a chapter had closed. She had endured. She had survived. And carefully, quietly, she had earned a version of respect. Her children had always lived outside that world on purpose. Tom Parker Bowles, her son, built his own identity entirely separate from the crown. He became a food writer, a critic, someone known for his opinions on restaurants and recipes rather than royal protocols. He liked it that way. So did Camilla. She had always been careful to keep Tom and her daughter Laura from being pulled into the machinery of royal life. They attended events sometimes, yes. They appeared in photographs occasionally. But they were never working royals. They were simply her children, and she protected that distinction fiercely. What she could not protect them from was the security apparatus that came with her new position. Every person who moved through the private entrances of royal residences was logged. Every vehicle was noted. License plates were run against clearance databases. Tom visited his mother regularly, and because of who his mother was, those visits were monitored with the same careful attention given to anyone connected to the crown. He knew this. He accepted it, even if he didn't like it. That Friday morning, he arrived earlier than expected. He drove a car that had not been pre-cleared in the system. That alone would have flagged attention. But it was the trunk that drew a second look. Sergeant Whitmore, a guard with more than 10 years of experience reading the subtle details that others missed, noticed the way it sat. Just slightly lower than it should have been. A small thing. The kind of thing that only registers to someone trained to notice everything. He didn't make a scene. He called for backup quietly and walked around the car slowly. Inside the residence, Tom was relaxed. He sat across from his mother talking about food, about a chef he'd recently met in Paris, about a cookbook he was working on. Camilla was listening, smiling. These visits were one of the few things in her schedule that felt genuinely human. No protocols, no titles, just her son talking the way sons do. She had no idea what was happening 20 feet away. When the guard knocked and asked Tom to step outside, the mood shifted instantly. Tom came out looking confused and then frustrated when he understood what they wanted. The trunk. He looked at it, then at the guards, then said the words that would define the next several hours. It's personal. Just papers and books. Nothing dangerous. Whitmore was polite. He was also immovable. Locked cases on palace grounds had to be opened. That was the rule, and there were no exceptions, not even for the Queen Consort's son. Tom pushed back. He said the word private twice and meant it both times. By then, Camilla had come outside. Her voice was sharp when she asked what was happening. She was used to tight security, but watching her son being questioned beside his own car was a different kind of discomfort. Then a second car entered the courtyard. Prince William stepped out. He had come to discuss a scheduling matter with Camilla. He was not supposed to be part of any of this. But when he took in the scene, the guards, the locked box, Tom's tense posture, and Camilla's expression, he didn't ask whether he should get involved. He simply did. He listened to the guards explain what they had found. He looked at Tom. He made his position clear. On royal grounds, security rules applied to everyone. If the box had nothing dangerous inside, that would be proven by opening it. Tom stiffened. He did not agree. He made that plain. William did not argue. He simply waited. When the lock finally gave and the lid came up, the courtyard went quiet in a way that had nothing to do with protocol. There were no weapons inside. No contraband. What lay inside that metal box, wrapped carefully in tissue paper and held together with elastic bands, were stacks of handwritten pages. Beneath those, several leather-bound diaries, their covers worn smooth from years of handling. And at the very bottom, 2 sealed envelopes. The handwriting on the outside of both was written in a script that William recognized before his mind had even finished processing what his eyes were seeing. He stopped breathing for a moment. The bold curves, the quick slanted strokes, the particular way the letters pressed harder at the beginning of each word. He had grown up seeing that handwriting. On birthday cards, on notes left beside his breakfast, on letters that arrived during school term when he was far from home and missing her. His mother had written those words. Princess Diana's private diaries and letters were sitting in a metal box in the trunk of his stepbrother's car. No one explained how. Tom said nothing. He looked at the ground. And that silence, more than anything else in that courtyard, told William that this was not an accident. Diana had written those diaries during the darkest years of her life. The pages William later read alone, with the door locked and the lamp burning low, were not the words of a public figure. They were the words of a woman who felt hunted. She wrote about phone calls she believed were being listened to, about people she suspected were watching her, about nights she spent crying alone in rooms where no one could hear. She named Camilla not with bitterness exactly, but with a heaviness that carried something worse than anger. The certainty of someone who had understood the truth and learned to carry it quietly. And near the end of one diary, written just months before the crash in Paris, Diana had written a single sentence at the bottom of a page. "If anything happens to me, it will not be an accident." William set the page down. He sat in his study for a long time after that, not moving, not calling anyone, just sitting with the weight of what his mother had written decades ago. Words she had never wanted found, or perhaps words she had desperately needed someone to find. The question burning through everything was not what had been in the box. It was how it had gotten there. These documents were supposed to be inside secure royal archives. They did not walk out on their own. Someone with access, real access, the kind that requires a level of trust most people never receive, had removed them. And they had ended up with Tom Parker Bowles, who had not offered a single word of explanation. William had looked at Camilla in that courtyard, just briefly. Everyone around him had shown some version of surprise. The guards, the household staff who had drifted closer. Even Tom, beneath his defensiveness, had shown the tight discomfort of someone caught. Camilla had shown nothing. Her face was calm, her posture composed. And that stillness, in a moment that had disturbed everyone else, was the thing William could not stop thinking about. He made his decisions carefully in the hours that followed. The documents were taken into his personal custody. A secure report was filed. A small legal team was assembled. Tom was formally questioned, not by police but by royal legal officers, which kept the matter off Scotland Yard's desk for the time being. Tom admitted having the trunk. He denied breaking into anything. He refused to explain where the documents had come from. "They've been hidden for a long time," he told the officers. That was all. William spoke to King Charles by phone. The call lasted 20 minutes. Charles, who had lived through enough family disaster to know the sound of one arriving, gave his son permission to handle it, but not much beyond that. "Handle it firmly," he said, "but don't let it destroy us." What that meant in practice was left entirely to William. Camilla instructed Tom not to speak to anyone. Royal press officers began fielding careful questions from journalists who were already picking up the edges of the story. A reporter from a major publication had already called asking whether something unusual had happened at Clarence House. The denial was given, but the question itself was the warning. William sat with his wife that evening. Kate asked what he would do. He told her the truth, the quiet version he wouldn't say in any meeting. If I let this go, I look like I'm protecting them. If I push, I blow the family apart. Either way, something breaks. What those letters revealed about Diana, what she feared and what she suspected, and what she wrote alone in the dark of royal residences, had never been meant for daylight. They had been locked away precisely because certain truths, once released, cannot be managed. The discovery had not answered any questions. It had only opened new ones. How many documents remained unaccounted for? Who had taken them? And how long had they been kept somewhere other than where they belonged? Diana had written that if something happened to her, it would not be an accident. She wrote it in her own hand, pressed it into the page, and sealed it inside a diary she believed was private. Her son had now read those words nearly 3 decades after her death. And nothing about the moment felt like closure. Some stories do not end with answers. They end with a door swinging open and a long hallway stretching out behind it. The question is not just what William found. The question is what he decides to do with it, and whether some things, once finally brought into the light, can ever be locked away again. If you have thoughts on what William should do next, leave them below. And if this story stayed with you, you already know what to do.